All right, it's Juan, Pedals and Effects, Jeorge Tripps in the house, way huge. We actually came to his lab. Check this out.
Secret laboratory, deep, dark depths
you can't
of
see
nowhere.
It. We're hiding some shit because some shit's top secret, but this, I've always wanted to come. It's somewhere in Los Angeles, and you guys don't even get to know where that is. So here we are. He's got a stack of guitars back here, and he's got this cool-ass one that was Paul Gilbert's. Right here.
You can pull it.
Yeah, check out the Ibanez. I think I've even played this
Probably
one.
have.
He's had it, I think he had it for a while, but check that. Ibanez 70s. There was a while he was buying a ton of 70s Ibanez.
I can't believe he sold it to me.
Do you remember when he got that guitar by any chance?
He told me it was in the 90s.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to say that. And yeah, that's when he got his Jerry Jones. That's when he was buying a ton of guitars. But this isn't about Paul Gilbert. Sorry, Paul. This is about Way Huge. And
wait, give it the back.
Yeah.
Some Thunder King.
Rockin' Thunder King. And I'm amped, so this is going to push through. So here we go. Jeorge, tell us, rough sketch of how you started in effects.
I was going to Santa Monica College.
I went there.
Why, awesome. I don't know, but I was going there, and I had a Craig Anderton Electronic Projects for Musicians book, and something just made me go back to that, because I had had it for a few years, and I had made a talk box back in the 80s. I mean, it's not hard. Hack off the speaker, and I stuck it in an old film developing can. It's actually sitting over there.
Whoa.
But no, I started just building stuff out of that in the early 90s, and a big thing happened. I was hanging out at Amp Crazy, if you remember Amp Crazy.
Definitely.
So the pedal thing was starting to happen, and I got a Fox tone machine that was just killer, but, it was made like, tin can. So I was like, I got to rebuild this. So I was messing with the Anderton stuff, and then basically built a tone machine and just started building them, and sitting over there is the first actual pedal that had Way Huge on it, which was a clone of a fuzz face.
Man.
So just for fun. Just started doing it in the early 90s, and then like 92 I think is the first thing I have that's dated.
Were you playing in bands at the time, or?
No, I moved to LA from Monterey and had a really hard time finding people to play with.
Right.
It was like either I really liked them and they were terrible musicians, or they were really good musicians and I hated their music.
Right.
I was like, where's that in between? Where's the guys that are competent and I like their music? I never found it.
So what year was that?
I moved here in 91, summer of 91.
So you were right at the getting out of the hair into the grunge.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
Sunset Strip was interesting.
Right, you got to see a little bit.
I got to see a little of the 80s thing happen, the grunge thing happen. The Coconut Teaser was still around.
Right.
All the good clubs.
Rage was, Rage Against the Machine was coming out then. Cool.
Sunset Strip actually had music.
Right.
And now it's all East Side.
Right.
So it's all Echo Park and stuff. But, just started building pedals for fun, and gave them to a few friends of mine, like the fuzz. It's a fuzz box my buddy in Monterey he still uses. The other one is an early Red Llama I made for Parthenon Huxley, and he was playing around and just kind of did that. And I think it was about 94-ish. I was working at Rack Systems building racks, and really tired of building power supplies.
Ugh.
And I think the big thing that happened was right around that time. I was at Rack Systems, and Tom Petty was rehearsing next door, and his tech came over to get some pedals, and we gave him a bunch of pedals, and he came back the next day, said, the red one's not coming back. And I'm like, that's mine. It's my Red Llama. I'm like, it's coming back. So I built Tom Petty a couple of Red Llamas. And
was it Tom or Mike? Or
it was Tom.
Wow.
It was for Tom. Shit. And so I went, I think I had to just start making pedals. Right. I just started doing that.
Damn. And so you're hustling them out of
my garage in Sherman Oaks.
That's
the
how
original ones have the old phone number. I feel sorry for whoever has that phone number now. I thought about trying to get it back. I'm like, I wonder if I could get that back just so it doesn't bother people.
So back then in LA, so it was like what, Full Tone was
doing it.
Anyone else?
In the early 90s, Prescription, that was sort of the first of the whole 90s movement. full tone, and then ZVEX came around in the mid '90s, like
he's in the
something.
Midwest, right?
Yeah, LA it was full tone.
Yeah, full tone because my friend Manny used to sell pedals to Mike, and that's how I met Mike. I met him when he first started getting it off the ground, and I have like one of his first fuzzes.
Nice.
Written with the metal inscribed on the back. And I think it still sounds great. I still use it. It's awesome. And then I heard about you probably through, I gotta say it's gotta be Paul. It must have been when we were talking about doing Racer X, like we came back after whatever, So do you know Paul from...
I know Paul from Dunlop. I didn't know him back in the day.
Okay.
There's, Troy Van Leeuwen?
Yeah, sure.
His buddy, I think it's Eddie. He's got a butt with all the pedals.
Yes.
Eddie knew me. Maybe. I don't know him that well, and he still has a ton of the weight.
Right.
And Jack, it was sort of like that.
I mean, of course, it probably was Jack too, because Manny, Jack, all of us were like, just getting into buying and selling pedals, but Manny really did it for a living, and then of course Jack did. But Jack from Future Music, so you guys know, that's where it's in my neighborhood, Highland Park. Jack,
music, man.
He's probably, for me, like the guy I go to is the most knowledgeable dude about pedals and guitars.
Shit.
He's crazy.
I think I met him when he was at Guitar.
Sure.
In the Valley, way back. So,
That's when all that excitement in LA started popping.
When there were stores on Sunset.
Yes.
Besides Guitar Center.
Man,
those were the days.
I was just like, that vintage store. And yeah, Manny would sell like Tycho Braves for like $600-700 back
then.
Yes.
Wow.
So
because I remember, at Ant Crazy, shit was expensive just compared to,
right.
That was all starting, but I don't remember that crazy. But
yeah, because he knew too that kind of he had a good. And he also knew Rockstar, so they would pay that much.
Right.
But then it got to be like, God, by the time the early 2000s when I was in Mars Volta, I mean, everything was in the $1,500 to $2,000 level from Freedom Guitar and all those other areas. But anyway, so then so you started Way Huge, and then how did your own pedal company work into where you went next?
Well, basically, it was really hard making pedals. The internet was not what it is now, so selling it meant really hustling, selling to stores, and I'm no sales dude, so it was just like a struggle. And then I had some friends at Line 6, and they were working on this pedal project, and they knew I knew a lot about pedals, so I started consulting with them. And then in December of '98, they offered me a job, and I was like, you know what, this is really interesting, this is fun, a paycheck would be nice, let's roll. So I worked at Line 6 for 7 years, worked on...
7? I didn't know that long.
Did all the big 4 buttons, the DL, the DM, the MM, the FM, the AM. I worked on Spider amps. I worked on the Tone Core series. And then in 2006, actually in 2004, I ran into Jimmy Dunlop on Maui, just by accident. Like, hey, dude. And we just started talking, and then, a year later, I was at Dunlop.
And
which I was super excited, because I was really excited I get to work on MXR, Fuzz Face, and Univibe. I'm like, this is like all the stuff I admired growing up. Like, wow. So that was actually more exciting than redoing Way Huge.
So you were
for me. He was more excited to do Way Huge because it was, Way Huge was just this, crazy, freaky cultish, California cultish thing, and the opposite of MXR. So for him, it was like, cool, I get to do this crazy stuff, and for me, I'm like, cool, I get to do MXR.
Yeah,
so
man.
it was great.
And so Jimmy's like when I kick it with him, he is a nerd. He's like a gear nerd. He's into what he does.
He's into what he does. He's Mr. Pick.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned so much about picks in 11 years. I'm like, I knew none of this. I'm like, it's a pick. Now it's just like, he's way nerdy about picks.
Oh man. So then you started doing that.
He'll kill me for that.
Well, so you're in Way Huge, and it's kind of like you got out of the digital world, because you were digital world over in Line 6, and now you're kind of focusing on analog delays and your distortions and your
and
fuzzes.
Digital. We just did digital MXR. The reverb is digital, and the Echoplex are both digital.
Oh, right.
So I get to do both now.
So when was... But initially it was mostly about the distortions.
It was all analog.
Right.
I brought the digital.
And you're the dude partly responsible, if not completely responsible, for the carbon copy?
I'll say 50%. I came up with the concept, what it should do, how it should work. the name, and Bob Cedro did all the actual heavy lifting of making it work.
Okay. Well, I've always wanted to ask you this. So I have my own ideas of why I think the carbon copy is so badass. But what do you think? Like when you were thinking about it, why did you ever think like, I think dudes really want this because
I knew people really wanted it because from Line 6 and from Way Huge, doing the Aquapost, people loved it, but it wasn't enough delay time. And I loved, the Memory Man, Deluxe Memory Man.
Right.
The modulation, that was the cool shit. And there was just a big, giant hole in the market. Like, nobody made analog delay. It's like, they just weren't there. So I'm like, hey, let's make an analog delay. But let's make, something as cool, as a Deluxe Memory Man with those features, but as small as a Phase 90.
Small as a phase. I mean, I'm telling you.
That was basically the concept. I mean, I still have the one page. It wasn't like super deep. It was like, hey, you do this, and let's call it carbon copy. Let's give it a cool name.
Damn. I mean, it's...
And then Bob, I was like, if you can make this... Literally, I had a sheet. I'm like, if you can make this work, we have a winner. I mean, we knew that walking in. It was just, can we do it for the price? Because, analog stuff is, especially bucket brigades, kind of a pain in the ass to get.
Right. That's exactly, for me, it was like size too. Like it sounded great, functioned great, but then most dudes that I knew was like, man, look at this little thing. It's a ass kicker, because it's so tight and it nails it.
And it gives a very analog sound. That dark, sound is a big part of why people dig it, because you can't really get that out of a digital.
And so then you're into Way Huge too, so you're getting back into it, like, and they're putting it out. So what was the first run of Way Huge through MXR Dunlop?
The first 3 pedals we did the tweaked reissue, the Swollen Pickle, the Fat Sandwich, and the Pork Loin. Those were the 3 that hit, and then people were going do reissue, and then so it's just been a feeling the market with so many pedals out there. Like when I did Green Rhino, I'm like, what? So many, it's a tube screamer, a modified tube screamer. When I did it, nobody else did because the Green Rhino was before the full drive. So nobody made, it's like you could get a TS9 reissue, I think, at the time, maybe. But I was like, I want a tube screamer, an 808 style, but with 2 bypass, and that was the Green Rhino. And so I'm like, but everybody does that now.
Right.
So that was sort of the tweaks, and just figuring out what's cool. And I work with a group of, mostly local musicians and stuff that, play out here and just have them test stuff. They get all sorts of weird experimental things. Sometimes they don't work. I just got the call, or the email, I should say, hey, this doesn't work. Like, okay, bring it back over. Because it happens all the time. Like, when you're prototyping, that's why
we're used to that too. That it's always, that's like a standard.
Yeah, but you guys are reviewing it. It's like I would never give something
I just think
that may not work.
Stuff, with friends on prototypes, like, hey, check this out, and you're like, it's fucking loud. Man,
or it doesn't work.
Like, is it supposed to do that? I'm always thinking, like, is it supposed to do that?
Right.
It's weird being on that end of, like...
Well, and the other crazy thing is pedals. You don't know what is getting plugged into it and what it's plugging into, and things react differently for impedance, and just different amps take stuff differently. Different guitars put out different. So you never know. That's a big battle. And then there's the people that always insist on shoving stuff into the effects loop, and I'm like, that's even more. Who knows how that's set up?
I've never ever in my life used an effects loop.
Really? Me neither. I'm not
I
always get, especially working on a delay. Oh, it doesn't work in the effects loop. Well, yeah, because it's instrument level. I mean, if it does, that's a really weak effects loop, and if it works, great. But there's some people, I won't name names, love the carbon copy in an effects loop, and it always sounds so compressed and messed up because it's getting hit, and there's a compressor expander circuit which doing all this weird shit. I'm like, hey, if you like it,
sure,
that works.
Sure.
So it's weird because one person will get something, this is too loud, and I'll give it to someone else, and it's like, nah, it's fine. I'm like, is it too loud? I don't know. That's always the scary part because you just don't know how people are really gonna. If you make it too tame, then it's too tame. Then everybody's like, yeah, whatever.
I mean, the other thing too, like you hit on a good point, because like I'm always trying to tell kids that get into it, and they're like, why don't you like this pedal, or whatever. And I said, you got to remember what you feed a pedal gives you completely different results. Like my P bass might sound great into this, whatever fuzz, and then I grab a different bass. I'm like, this sounds like dog shit. And then the amp. So if I plug this into my tube head, SVT sounds great. If I plug this into a solid state head, it's gonna, Right. So all these combos, like there's no one, like there's too many variables.
One. Yes, exactly. And then there's order, and people, what's the? I'm like, the order is what sounds the best.
Yeah, and
I mean, there's a guideline, like, okay, start with sort of like filters up front, distortions, modulations, and delays.
Right.
Start there. But that is by no means like that's how it should be done.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Not at all. Like basically plug anything in, just, try not to blow anything up. Because you don't know. I mean, I get asked, questions like, can I do this? I'm like, I don't know, try it. But, be careful.
Yeah, right.
Put the volume down, bring those kinds of things because you don't want to blow shit up. And,
right.
But there's no rules. Whatever sounds cool.
Thank you. And so, the one thing I was going to ask you is that, so when you are designing and making pedals, when you're playing through them or whatever, how much of what you want to hear goes into it, and how much is like you're listening to people that you know?
A bit of all of it.
Oh,
it kind of depends what I'm doing. Typically, it's listening to other people. I've become more and more the Leo Fender and less what I like, because what I like tends to not be liked, which is fine. I'm like, hey,
Sure.
So, I listen to different people. That varies depending what's going on, depending what we're trying to do.
Right.
Like working on the reverb as an example. Since there's different kinds of reverbs, I listen to different people for different reverbs.
Right.
Like I had cats that were like spring reverb dudes.
Right.
Like, you guys are my go-to guys. If you like this, I'm in the right spot.
Right.
And then there's the guys at the plate reverb, because I had people that were like, no, you gotta make this spring reverb more, like studio quality. I'm like, no. You have to play Miserloo with this thing. If it doesn't do Miserloo, you're not spring reverb. So it was sort of like,
right.
I had different groups of people just in that, so it depends.
And so say for instance Strymon, so they have this big famous reverb. So they came out with their reverb, and like every dude I knew ended up getting,
it's good reverb.
And so is that the one thing, like I'll discuss this with a lot of my friends, but like it's like because I didn't really care for it. Like why do you like it so much? And it's like, are they getting wooed in by the functionality, or is it really? Because I think the Eventide smokes it.
Honest, I think what with the Strymon, I think what they did really, really right, that really worked for people, was having the analog dry path. Which, so your dry signal wasn't digitized.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference.
Okay.
In how things sound.
Fuck, I never
if you
even
digitize everything, well, that's when people,
right.
It sounds digital. It's not that it's digital. It's just you're getting full bandwidth, and you're going through. You got latency no matter what. And so
damn, they smart.
So that's my opinion. I mean, they may say it's wrong,
right.
but I mean the reverbs are great in it. But that was the thing I think they brought to the table that went, this is the next level of a digital pedal.
Got it.
Because like the DL4 it's not like that. Everything's digitized.
Yeah, shit.
No
that's something right now I learned. I was like, I never thought of that. I always thought it would just be analog. But no, now that makes sense.
Yeah, no, because I mean that's a whole other. We could talk for hours on the construction, but I think that's what they brought to the table. Besides great algorithms, they brought this analog side to it. They combine the analog and digital in a really
so the
cool
algorithms way. It's gonna dictate the fidelity, or is it really like, is that how you color digital?
It's how you color digital.
Okay.
It's a good way to say it, because the fidelity is going to depend on your ADD converter and lots of other, because you still have analog. It goes from analog,
right.
You convert to digital. Once it goes digital, you can do anything. And that's sort of how you create a lot of the tones and the feel and all that kind of stuff. And color would be a good way to say it. Outside of the analog, usually people try to make that do as little as possible, so most of the manipulating is in digital.
Right. Okay. So now we're talking about that. So I wanted to get your opinion on this, because we obviously love boxes. What do you think of where shit's heading in some cases with the Kempers and those kinds of? I mean, I know a lot of companies like Line 6 has their format that they're coming out with.
And all that.
Yeah.
What do I think of it?
Like, do you think that's where it's going to head? Do you think? I think part of it, obviously is heading that way. But do you think that?
I think guitar players are usually very apprehensive about new stuff. guitar players are really related to rock, even if they're not playing rock. There's sort of a very, anti-authoritative type of thing when you play guitar. This angry control, and I think that's why a lot of people, when they play guitar, it's like it's either they're doing it for the chicks back in the day, or they're doing it because it's a power trip. I mean, it is, because all of a sudden you've got this big loud thing and you're kind of dominating, and guitar players always kind of go backwards, and I don't mean that negative, but you end up, you start like, oh man, I love, Van Halen, and well, who did he listen? Oh, he listened to Eric Clapton,
Right.
And it just goes back till you're like listening to Robert Johnson.
Right.
They just kind of happen, we all go through that. And then you come back to wherever it is that you're really into, but we kind of devolve all the time.
Right.
And it takes a long time for new technology to really, like, whammy. It didn't blow up. It wasn't like, wow, it took a little while for people to start, like, using it for it to become this really popular, effect. And I think guitar players are kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good way, because I guess, because I keep wondering, like, our dude's just going to be like, all right, now I got to just deal with this. Because, I mean, Nick and I did this thing where we brought the Earthquaker pedals to Dweezil for him to check out.
Right.
And he had a Kemper, I think, or
Fractal.
Fractal. He had a Fractal.
Multiple fractals.
Yeah, and he still had pedals.
Well, because some of the digital stuff can't the big thing that a lot of the digital can't do is that interactive impedance issues that you find mostly with fuzzes.
Right.
The really weird shit. And, that's what he's doing a lot of that for.
Right.
It's just like the guitar interacts with this thing, and to create that in digital is really difficult, because now all of a sudden you have to have this interactive thing where it's just getting a signal. It's not that the pedal is, going, oh, it's just the impedance of a guitar going into the impedance, and they just react weird.
Right.
But yeah, Dweezil uses just so much stuff, and it was like, oh my God. But he milks those fractals. And that's the thing, what I find with the technology is it's super cool, but you have to be willing to deep dive in it. Otherwise, just, a knob is easier.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't want to do that. I had a friend who was like he wanted this giant rig. I'm like, really, honestly? And I'm like, you should look at a fractal, because you can get all that. I said, but you really have to spend the time. You got to dig into it, and you can really make these things sound great. But it's not going to be great if you just plug it in and like, oh, here, I'm going to use this. And like, you got to work it.
Yeah.
Where analog stuff, the difference is it's not that it's so much greater. It's just it either does it or it doesn't, and you move on to the next one.
Right.
It's like, okay, that, Tweed Deluxe, it's cool, but it's not loud enough. Okay. Because the whole amp is the filter, the box, the circuitry, everything. Pedals are simple too. It's like, oh, it's either working or it's not.
Right.
So
Right.
You can move on.
I mean, that whole concept for me, it's also just not as fun. Like, going into a thing and programming shit just doesn't sound fun to me. Going like this, but I know I'm old, and so maybe that's the problem.
I feel the same way, but I've had so many experiences with people that have done that, where I'm like, holy crap, that sounds amazing, and they spent hours, just like we would with putting. You're spending hours going, oh, well, this box, run that way, and into this amp with this. Oh my God, that's amazing. It's the same thing. It's just a different way of doing it.
Right. Yeah.
So, but you got to spend the time. It's like, even with pedals, you're not going to plug it all in and be like, that's the most amazing thing ever. You got to find that little.
Do you think the Edge is going to get into it?
I think a little bit. I mean, he uses some of that stuff.
I figure he probably uses some of it. Just like Weasel,
We did that whole, there's one of the panels there. We only made a dozen of those. Whoa. Rack-mounted version of the distortion.
No shit.
Just a small team of us did it for him at Line 6. And he still uses them. Because on How to Dismantle Atomic Bomb, he used 11 DM4s. And they're like, how are we going to take this on the road? And we're like, okay. And so basically on our free time, there was a group of 5 of us who worked on it. We made about a dozen. Everybody on the team.
So in other words, he has 30 different tones that comes out.
Yeah. I mean, most of that record, I believe, was that box for the distortion. And so that's why he's got a pair of those still in his rig, the gold ones, and just they pop. You go, oh, yeah, look at that.
Oh, shit. Oh, I love the Edge. It's one of my favorites, and really like a tone dude, like a sound dude. You know what I mean? From the gate, he was blasting out weird shit. You're like, what is he doing now? Like, every record you wanted to see if he was going to throw something at you.
Right.
Like Van Halen. Like, for me, Van Halen
it's pretty similar. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, so like, is there any like one tone that you would love to see in a box, like some people like whatever, like Van Halen 1 or 2 or.
I mean, so many people try to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, it's just sort of like I don't think there is like, oh, that's a Van Halen in a box or anything like that. It's more just kind of coming up with stuff that's useful.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I like to do. Find something that's cool and people like, and it's helpful and it's a useful tool. Because it's just all tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, got to thank Jeorge Tripps coming out here. Check out.
Coming right to my office.
Yes, we are here, and we couldn't have been. I don't know, man. I'm gonna probably be here for another 3 hours, rapping out with this dude and hitting him up for all the trade secrets. So, thanks, Jeorge. I appreciate.
Thanks for having me.
Hell yes.
Check it out, Thunder King.